library. Kids do not use it, and the reading scores at this school is really low. We're trying to make it pretty so students will come and get their imagination and reading on, and we are so excited. Amazing day. Right. Today was amazing. I slept over at my friend's house in the Bronx and had the surf day at... So today we had, oh god. It's just great. I did want to share prior to getting to church, total God moment. Once again,
I slept over at my friend's house in the Bronx because I thought, you know,
it's the weekend, trains are crazy, and it's just going to be easier to go from the Bronx to Harlem. Woke up early, got my coffee, was with my friend, and everything was just going great until I try and go into the train station and the D train is not working. Cool. Now what? Either go to a different train station or catch an Uber. So I caught an Uber. I got in the Uber and I was like, okay, God, are you here doing something right now?
Yes.
I just asked my driver, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? He's like, good, how was yours? And I was like, well, the trains are not working. I'm late for my thing. Then I asked him if he spoke Spanish and he said yes. I told him that I speak Spanish too, but I'm a little embarrassed at times, and you know, then he's just sharing his story and how he got here 20 years ago from DR. And then I hear like K-Love, the radio station K-Love music, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask him if he's a Christian. And so, okay. Brooklyn.
We're Brooklyn!
He just stopped right outside of my apartment to yell at the phone.
Yeah!
And so I'm waiting for him to finish whatever he's saying to ask him if he's a Christian. And I asked him in Spanish. I was like, ¿Tú eres un cristiano? And he looked at me as if I spoke Chinese. And I was like, okay, we literally just had a conversation about me feeling insecure about my Spanish, and you just like act like you didn't hear my question? Like, really, dude? And then I asked him again in English and I was like, are you a Christian? He looks at me in the rearview mirror and he's like, how do you know? And I was like, hello, you're listening to K-Love, like, way to make it so obvious. But I was like, oh, the song that you're listening to. And he was just so like taken aback, like he was so confused at what was happening. He was quiet. Like, this guy has been talking this entire time, in the part where I'm like so ready to talk about Jesus, he's like quiet. Ooh, okay. I just smell weed, so that's why I was like, ooh, okay. That's really strong. I need to buy some Febreze. And he was like, yeah, I am a Christian. I share my story with him and how God spoke to me about New York. Got to practice my Spanish. Woo! He's just listening the entire time. He doesn't comment or anything. And after I finish, he stops and he's like, you're supposed to be here right now. And I was like, obviously, like, hello, I'm in your Uber car. Like, this is not a coincidence. This has been happening to me for the past like few weeks. His demeanor completely changed. He was like, you're supposed to be here. And then he had like an encouraging word for me, and he's like, the Lord just spoke to me and you're basically going to use Spanish for the Lord. It's crazy because God has just been reaffirming that he's going to use my languages. He's like, let me tell you my story. He was a taxi driver for 15 years. And God had called him out of that. So then he became a preschool teacher. And he said recently, God called him out of that to be a taxi Uber driver. Again, he was like, God has just been confirming, like, person after person that comes in my car, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. He was just kind of shocked at the fact that he was in his calling, and God was like really confirming to him that he's supposed to be doing Uber. I kind of just encouraged him, and I told him, just the fact that you're listening to Christian music, like, even if people come in and they're not Christian, you're planting seeds and you're exposing them to the truth and God's, you know, amazing greatness. And he was like, yeah. And he just was so like this is such a God moment. Just how I guess the morning went, it wasn't a coincidence. And especially because like the train wasn't working, and I was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? And he was just like, I'm gonna continue praying for you. And so I got to church and I literally just wanted to cry. I was just like, I want to sit in the bathroom and just cry for 5 minutes and then I'll be back to help. Just kidding. I was late and I was like, I was feeling a little out of place at my church for a little bit. When I walked in, the guy that was checking people in, he was like, hey, can I check you in? And I was like, yeah. And my pastor was like, that's NYSia. And I was like, oh. And when he said that, like, I guess all the lies that I had been believing, that like I don't belong at this church and I don't know, it kind of like sat in my spirit, like God's doing a work in you here. It was just such a simple thing for him to have done. And God has given me Isaiah 43 all last year and part of this year. And it says in verse 1, do not be afraid, for I've ransomed you. I have called you by name and you are mine. And that's what came to my mind when he said that. And God was like, I have called you by name. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. Got it. No more doubts. From the beginning of the day, I felt like everything was going wrong. I didn't get the train. I was late. And I had even told my Uber driver that, Ramon, I feel like everything is going wrong today. And he was like, but that just means that something great is about to happen. He said that, right? And I was like, I think this guy's a Christian, because that's such a Christian thing to say. Like basically that's what I would tell people, like, oh, if the enemy's on you today in the morning, like God's coming through, you best believe. Yeah, I just think that God's gonna do an amazing work in me, and that's why I'm just being